theyeshiva.net.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We'll continue with the Gemarah. The Sugya of Reb Chanina is Gana Koyanim. Yeah? You want to give the Gemarahs to everybody? Please. Bruchim Abayim. One of our virtual participants in live. We're up to Daf Yudalin Amud Beis, 3 lines from the top. Let's recall our discussion. Okay, now, I should just say 2 things. First of all, this Gemarah is impossible to retain without Chazara. It's very, very important to Chazar. It's very nice that you come to the Shir and we learn and we discuss, but without Chazara, it's just impossible. Any Gemarah, but especially this Gemarah. So I would strongly request and suggest that during the day, at any point, you take a Gemarah and you try to review it. Try to review it a few times, because then, as you'll see, the sugya builds on itself, and every few lines a new concept is introduced, and a new question, a new answer, and a new proof. And you really have to be able to retain it in an organized, systematic way. So it's very, very important to review Techazer, the introductions that we learned, but also the whole mahalach, the whole halach yelech of the whole development and evolution of the sugya. As I said at the beginning, this can seem very confusing and overwhelming, but the truth is, it's not. In other words, if you concentrate, if you tune into it, you understand. So I'm going to try to be very organized today and give it, Be'ezer Hashem, clarity to the best of our ability, at least on the basic level. So the Mishnah introduced 2 testimonies, one from Reb Chanina and one from Rabbi Akiva. Right? First, the Gemarah covers the first testimony, and then the Gemarah covers the second testimony. The first testimony of Reb Chanina was what? That he is seeing that throughout the years, the Kohanim did not mind burning 2 pieces of meat that were tameh, 2 pieces of meat of karbonos, of holy sacrifices that were tameh, together in a fire. Even though, as a result, the tumah, the impurity of one was increased. And the Gemarah explained, what did he mean? That there were 2 pieces of meat. One was called a Rishon. Why was it a Rishon? Because it touched an Av HaTumah. Just for simplicity, an example, a piece of meat came in contact, say, with one of the 8 shratzim that died. Let's say a mouse that died, and it fell on this piece of meat. Maybe it died on the piece of meat, right? And now this basar is tameh. What's the halacha? You have to burn it. Because a carbon that becomes tameh, you're not allowed to eat it. Nobody's allowed to eat it. Not a Kohen, not a Levi, not a Yisrael. So you have to burn it. So you put it in a fire. Now you have another piece of a meat, also from a carbon. It also became tameh. But what type of tumah was it? It touched a sheni. So it's a shlishi. In other words, let's say it touched meat that touched a sheretz. Meat that touches a sheretz is a rishon. That meat touched another piece of meat. That meat is a sheni. That meat touched a 3rd piece of meat. That meat is a shlishi. You're not allowed to eat it. You're not allowed to eat it. You have to burn it. But it's not a rishon. It's a shlishi. It's a much lower level of tumah. And we know that it's a lower level of tumah because it's not going to be able to transfer it too much longer. It could make one more level, a revi, but that's it. It stops. Now, you're not allowed to be metame meat that is holy. You're not allowed to be metame truma. The Pasuk teaches us you're not allowed to be metame meat that's holy. When they put it in a fire together, the first meat is going to come in contact with the second piece of meat. What's going to happen to the second piece of meat? From a shlishi, it's going to become a sheni, because it's going to touch a rishon. They didn't mind. They didn't mind doing it. Why? Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't increase the tumah. But since it's being thrown into the fire where it's being burnt, Reb Chanina says it's fine. Comes Rabbi Akiva, and he ohaisif Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva added something. What did Rabbi Akiva add? That during the days of the Kohanim, they never had a problem doing the following thing. They had oil, and the oil became disqualified to eat, to consume, to benefit from. It was oil of truma, as Rashi says. How did it become disqualified? A tvul yoim touched it. A tvul yoim touched it, and he makes such truma shlishi. A Tvul Yom, let's remember, is a Jew who was Tameh. He went to the Mikveh. He came out of the Mikveh. He's pure. But until nightfall, there is still a little impurity in him. This is called Tvul Yom. He went to the Mikveh, but it's still daytime. And because it's not nightfall yet, there's still a little tumah in him. Where is it represented? If he touches truma. If he touches truma or karbanos, that becomes disqualified. It can't be eaten. So a tvul yom touched truma. What do the kohanim have to do with this oil? They have to burn it. They can't eat oil that was touched by a tvul yom because you're not allowed to eat truma that is tameh. You're not allowed to eat such truma. You have to burn it. You can't leave it around. You have to burn it. Comes Rabbi Akiva and said, you know what they did with this oil? This oil they put into a neir, to a lamp, to a menorah, candelabra. And this menorah was a menorah that touched a tmei mace. It touched a human being, or a human being touched it, somebody who touched a corpse. What's the definition of this menorah? What is it? So what did the Gemarah explain? The Rabbi Akiva said that this neir was nitma b'tmei mace. It touched a person who touched a mace. A person who touches a mace is called an av hatuma. If he touches a lamp, a menorah, a candelabra, which is a keli, it becomes a Rishon l'tumah. When I put this oil in the cups of this lamp, like our menorah, you put the oil in the cup. What happens to the oil? It became a sheni, because it came in contact with the menorah, which is a Rishon, because it touched the person who touched the mace. So now the oil's tumah was increased from a shlishi, it became a sheni. They didn't mind doing that. Why didn't they mind doing it? Again, the same idea. Since it's being burnt, the oil is not there to remain there. It's going to be consumed in a few hours. The oil is going to be gone because it's fueling the fire in this lamp. So Rabbi Akiva said they did not mind increasing the tumah of the oil, making it from a shlishi to a sheni. To a sheni. Right? That's what Rabbi Akiva said. Yeah, apparently they felt that the isser to be at matame is not applicable when it's about to be disposed, when it's about to be burnt. It's not going to be around. It's about to be destroyed. It's on the way, You're saying if it's like kala oimed lisrev kesarav dami. It's almost like it's burnt already. It's like gone. Interesting. In other words, since it's about to be burnt, it's like burnt already. It could be, yeah. It could be that's the right svara for it. It could be. Yeah. Asks the Gemarah a very simple question. What is Rabbi Akiva adding to Reb Chanina? He's just repeating the same story in a different scenario. Reb Chanina said you're allowed to make from a shlishi a sheni. Rabbi Akiva said the same thing. Just he spoke about meat and he spoke about oil, but it's the same principle. What's the haisif Rabbi Akiva? It could say Rabbi Akiva said, I also know about the same thing. But it says haisif, he added something. He added means you added, you were mechadish, there's something novel about it, but there's not novel. He's saying the same thing. Reb Chanina said you took a shlishi and you made it a sheni because the second meat touched the first meat. The second meat was a shlishi, the first meat was a rishon. Right? When the last meat touches the first meat, it becomes a sheni. Rabbi Akiva says the same thing. So on this, Rabbi Yehuda taught us that Rabbi Akiva was actually telling us a bigger chiddush. What was the chiddush? It wasn't a regular lamp, it was a ner shel matches. It was a metal menorah. It wasn't an earthenware. It was very common. Most lamps in the days of the Shas, the days of the Mishnah, if you'll even go to museums and you'll see about the pottery then, you'll see most lamps were made either of metal or of earthenware. Cheres was very common because it was cheap. So even poor people can afford it. And that's why you'll see in all the museums or all the excavations, you'll always see these little lamps of cheres. You ever see? They're called clay, right? They're earthenware pottery. They're very simple. You take mud, you put in some straw, you bake it in the oven, and you have a clay cheres, a menorah. They would basically, it was like a cup, not a cup like this, more flat, flatter, shallower, and you could see clearly they had a place for the oil, a place for the wick sometimes. So it was very common that a menorah, a lamp, either was a candelabra, just a very simple lamp, was made out of earthenware or out of metal. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Akiva is talking about a ner shel matches, metal. And here we were introduced to a fascinating halacha that is unique by a mace. And that is, that what? Cherev harehu kecholol. Cherev harehu kecholol. What's the halacha of cherev harehu kecholol? So we explained that there's a very astonishing pasuk in Parshas Chukas, where it says that if you touch a mace, a dead person, the bone of a dead person, the grave of a dead person, and it also says a person slain by sword, you become tameh for 7 days. And the Chazal ask a question, why suddenly? Very good. That's an image, yeah. Beautiful, yeah. That's exactly what I meant, yeah. That's a klecheres. Let me see a second. It's yours, or you just? Just my museum. So it's your museum. Ah, beautiful. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Let me show. Oh, they're not going to see. Okay. So the wick. It's oil. The wick is there. The wick is coming here. Oil poured here. Beautiful. Okay. So the question the Chazal say is, why do you have to tell me b'chalal cherev or b'meis, a slain victim through a sword and a dead person? Even if you want to tell me that there's two types of people who died. There's a person who died naturally, a person who died unnaturally. But why a sword? There could be so many different ways that a person can die. And you can't tell me that you're only tameh if you touch somebody who was killed by a sword, because it says mace, any mace you're tameh, not only somebody who was killed by a sword. And it's interesting, in the same parsha later, the Torah just says, b'chalal, if you touch a chalal, if you touch a victim, a slain victim, without the word cherev. From here, Chazal learned out a very fascinating halacha, that there is a unique quality of tumah that affects the sword that came in contact with the mace. Cherev hareyu kechalal. The sword which killed the mace has the same exact quality in terms of halacha like the mace itself. And from here we learn a gewaldike yesod, and that is that a clay, how Rashi explains, a clay matches, a metal vessel which touched a mace, assumes the same status of the mace. In other words, it becomes an avois hatuma. So if a person touches it, the person is now considered an avatuma, just like if he touched a mace. So therefore, this neir of matches, if it touched the mace, it's an av hatuma. But there's one more detail here, and that is that this metal keli, when it touches something that is connected to tumas mace, it assumes the same quality of that which it touched. So if it touches a mace, it's an aviyah vaisatuma. Yeah. If somebody takes a sword and kills somebody, right? Even though he didn't touch the mace, but the cherev touched the mace and I touched the cherev, so I am now tameh 7 days. Just like if I touched the mace himself. A Jewish body can cast tumah in a tent, in an ohel, even if you don't touch it. If you're in the same house, under the same roof. But everybody, even a non-Jewish body, if you have physical contact with it, you still have tumah 7 days. So even the body of a Gentile can be metame you 7 days if you touch it, or in this case, you touch the sword that touched the mace. It's a very interesting halacha. Now what happens if the sword didn't touch the mace, but the sword, a keli of matches, a metal keli, touched the person who touched the mace? Again, the keli will assume the same quality of that which it touched. So now the keli will be an avatuma, just like the person. So if I touch a mace and then I touch a metal lamp, that metal lamp is not a Rishon. That metal lamp is an av, just like me. And this we learn from a second pasuk in this week's parsha. The Jews go to war against Midian, and it's a fascinating story. Afterwards, Moshe tells them, Anybody who killed anybody has to stay outside of the machane for 7 days because you're tameh. Even though you did the right thing, Midian was wanted genocide for the Jewish people. So you did the right thing, but you're still tameh 7 days. And then he says, "V'chibastem bigdeichem b'yoyim hashvi." You got to wash your clothes on the 7th day. My clothes on the 7th day? Why? My clothes never touched the mace. My clothes touched me. How do we understand this? Okay. So we have two sources. We have in Chukas, Chalal Cherev, we speak about the sword. In Matos, we speak about the clothes. So I'll just tell you very briefly, there's two views in the Rishon. There's a view of Rashi, the view of the Rambam. First, we'll do the view of the Rambam. The view of the Rambam is that all kalim, not only metal, this is a halacha about all kalim, all vessels and utensils besides earthenware pottery, all vessels and utensils which touch a mace become an avi avos hatuma. If they touch a person who touches a mace, they become like the person. That's why my clothes need cleansing for 7 days. My clothes didn't touch a mace, but they touched me. I'm wearing them. And I touched the mace, and I was still tameh. So my clothes need the same cleansing with the ashes of the red heifer and the water on the 3rd day and the 7th day and mikveh. And clothes are not metal. Clothes are clothes, whatever they're made out of. They could be leather or other fabrics that you make the clothes, wool, linen, but they still have tumah. Why? Because they touch a person. So therefore, the Rambam's shita is that cherev is just a metaphor, a parable for a utensil, but it includes all utensils, including clothes. Fascinating. Okay? And this is a unique thing by Matos-Maasei, that you touch something and you acquire the same tumah of that which you touch. The shit of Rashi is that it's only metal, because it says cherev. Cherev is not linen, and cherev is not wool, and cherev is also usually not earthenware. Cherev was metal. That was the power of a cherev. It was barzel, metal. Different types of metal, but it was a metal. Now the question is, what if you didn't kill him with a sword? What if you killed him with a spear? You're going to say the halacha changes? The Chazal couldn't understand that would make sense. So they therefore didn't see cherev as inclusive cherev. They saw cherev as klei matches, as a paradigm. It's called binyanav, for all klei matches, for all metal. It says that the begodim become tamei for 7 days, right? You asked begodim and that. So they interpret the begodim in Parshas Matos as very different meaning. It says that the Kohen Gadol had to have 8 begodim, and one of them was a tzitz. What was the tzitz made out of? Gold, metal. It's called a beged. So you can have a garment that's called a garment, but really it's made out of metal. They believe that those begodim are not the clothes, the sweater and pants and kapata you're wearing. Those clothes meant the metal vessels or utensils. For example, if you're wearing a garment out of metal, and it touches you, right? Let's say a person is wearing a piece of jewelry that's metal. It's gold or silver, and it's touching the person. That metal would become tamei 7 days. So it's two different ways of learning it. One way is that cherev defines the quality. It's only metal. And all metal has this quality that it becomes tamei like the source. So if you touch the mace, you're an avi avois. And if you touch the adam, you're an av. And that's the pasuk in Matos. What type of begodim? Begodim that are metal. Tachshitim, jewelry that is metal, like the tzitz is called a beget. Even though it's not a classic garment, the tzitz was on the forehead, but it was made of metal. It was made of gold. It wasn't made of wool. It wasn't like the pants of the kohen. That taka wouldn't become tamei. That's the shita of Rashi. Only matches, only metal. The shita of the Rambam and other Rishonim is all vessels have the same status of the original thing that became tamei, whether it's the person or the mace. They assume the same status. And that's unique by Matos-Maasei, that if the keli is becoming tamei from a tumah that's affected by a mace, it assumes the quality of the original. And therefore, the keli becomes that tumah like the original, that same status. And if it touches a mace, it's an avi avois. And if I touch it, now I'm an av. If it touches me, it becomes an av just like me. And now it will be also tamei 7 days. So that's just two ways of understanding it. According to the opinion of the Rambam, that it's all kalim, Why does he say Ner Shel Matches here? The answer is because, that's why I said that in the time of the Mishnah, they only used to make two types of menorahs, from metal and from earthenware. So if it's not earthenware, it's going to be metal. But the point is that it's not earthenware. Earthenware does not have this halacha. Earthenware does not assume the status of the original thing that it touches. It rather goes down a level. So therefore, the earthenware that touches the person becomes a Rishon l'tumah. And even the earthenware that touches the mace or the food and the beverages are not called an avatumah, they're called a Rishon. Because they're not metame, adam, and kalim. And therefore they're not called an avatumah even if they touch the mace itself. Okay, how is this all relevant here? Rabbi Akiva was talking about a ner shel matches that touched the person who touched the mace. So that ner, that lamp, is not a Rishon, it's an Av. Now when you put the oil in it, the oil doesn't become a Sheni, the oil becomes a Rishon. So the oil went up from Shlishi, it went to Rishon. That's the Chiddush of Rabbi Akiva over Reb Chanina. Reb Chanina, the meat went from Shlishi to Sheni. For Rabbi Akiva, the oil went from Shlishi to Rishon. That's a much greater tumah than from Shlishi to Sheni. Shlishi to Rishon is a much greater tumah. It's a whole different level of tumah. And we understand that it's a different level of tumah because when meat goes from Shlishi to Sheni, Sheni is a big tumah, but you can't compare it to a Rishon. And I'll show you why. In Chulin, Sheni doesn't travel anymore. Right? Sheni cannot replicate the tumah. With Sheni, the tumah stops. The tumah is interrupted. But when something becomes a Rishon, it could be metame even chulin, because chulin could become a sheni also. So you can't compare the quality of tumah that we call a sheni to the quality of tumah that we call a rishon. So when the meat becomes a sheni, it taka went up a level. But in many ways, if this meat will touch chulin, it won't affect any tumah, it won't travel anymore. You really interrupted the tumah on that level. But when oil becomes a rishon, even if it touches chulin, it's going to make it a sheni. So therefore, it's a greater chiddush of Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva was talking about a ner shel matches, not a ner shel cheres. It's clear? Okay. Okay, so I'll explain. A good question. If he wants to understand how it works, here's the summation. Just listen carefully and you'll get it based on Hashem. A tumah from a mace, which has the power to contaminate a keli matchis, or maybe all other kelim besides cheres, two opinions. The keli that gets tameh doesn't go down a level. It assumes the status of the original source. So practically, if it touched a mace, it becomes like the mace. Okay? If it touched a tameh mace, if it touched me and I touched a mace, it becomes like me. What happens if it touched you who touched me? It becomes nothing, because a keli can become a sheni. You understand? You got it? I'll say it again. Exactly. A keli could never become a sheni, biblically speaking. Let's remember, right? A keli stops by rishon. Yeah. So if the keli touches the mace, yeah? Can I call this a mace? If the keli touches the mace, it becomes an aviyah voice. If the keli touches me and I touch the mace, it becomes an av. It becomes like me. I'm an avatumah because I touch the mace. I could be metame another person. I could be metame kelim. But when I'm metame the keli becomes just like me. According to everybody, the Rambam just says that it's not only metal, it's any keli besides earthenware. That's the machlokes. Metal is for sure. The question is, what about other clothes or other kelim, not metal? That's a machlokes or rishonim. Rashi says it's only matches. The Rambam says it's all kelim and b'gadim. And the question is in Matos how you interpret the word b'gadim. That becomes it's an interesting debate, very interesting debate. This is the power of a keli. The power of a keli is that it doesn't just become tameh, it assumes the original tumah that it came in contact with. It becomes like mamish dveikus, right? Mamish dveikus. To give an example, we have it in the positive, right? The Gemarah says in Ksuvas, uladafka boy, connect to Hashem. How do you become dovik in Hashem? Right? So he says, Kol ha-dovik b'talmidei chachamim, Maila lavakasov kilu nidbak b'shchina mamish. Right? You become dovik in the Talmud Chacham. The real Talmud Chacham is somebody who's completely nullified and one with Hashem. So it's like you're touching the Shechina, so to speak. You're dovik b'shchina. Because he's a keli for the Shechina. He's a keli for the Shechina. Yeah? So when somebody is a keli, so when you touch the keli, it's like you touched that which the keli touched. You're not touching the keli, you're touching that which the keli touched, because the real keli is the one who becomes a complete conduit for the original tara or the original tumah. Huh? That's a gewaldige chiddush. So there's a machloikas or rishonim if it's any keli or only matches. So Rashi says it's only matches, only metal, like a sword. It has to be like a sword, which is metal. And the Rambam says, and other rishonim say it's all vessels besides cheres, which are excluded, earthenware. That's not. Here we have a ner that's metal. Well, he doesn't say, he just says ner. So now let's see. So if the keli touches the mace, it becomes aviyah voice. If the keli touches me, and I touch the mace, it becomes an av. What if you touched me, right? What if you touched me, so you're now a Rishon. You don't need a paraduma. You just need to go to the mikveh and wait till the night. I touched the mace, I need paraduma. I need ashes and water. But you who touched me, you become a Rishon. I'm an av, so I could make you a Rishon. But if you touch a keli now, the keli is tahor, because the keli is not going to become a sheni. It's only the keli that's coming in contact with tumas meis that's becoming tameh. That tumah is so deep that it assumes the original tumah. Because if this nair, let's say of metal, touched me and I touched the mace, so now this little lamp, this cute little metal lamp, is an avatuma. So when I put food into it or drinks into it, like oil, it becomes a Rishon. So when I take oil that a Tvul Yom touched, which that oil was a Shlishi, and I have to burn it because I'm a Kohen, I'm not allowed to eat this oil, I'm not allowed to drink this oil, I can't put it in my salad, I'm not allowed to. What do? I burn it. I have a lamp, it's dark at night, right? It's Hanukkah. I want to light Hanukkah candles, I just need a fire at night. So what do? I take the oil and I put it in my menorah, in my lamp. The problem is the lamp touched me. Because I'm a tamei mace and I touched the lamp. So the lamp is a av. And the oil now becomes a Rishon. So I just elevated the tumah from Shlishi to Rishon. Rabbi Akiva says, no worries. Why? Because it's being burnt anyway. And just for qualification, this halacha is only a keli that became tamei from a mace, or a keli that became tamei from a person who became tamei from a mace. A keli that becomes tamei from another keli will not assume the original status. Okay? So for example, if my ner touched a mace, that ner is aviyah vois hatuma. If that ner touches another ner, it's going to be an avatuma. And if that ner touches another ner, it's going to be a rishon l'tumah. And if that ner touches another ner, it's nothing, because it doesn't become a sheni. Yeah. So the ner was an av. So the shemen becomes a rishon. It's bumped up. The person was an av. When a keli touches a person, it assumes the same quality of the person. So therefore, the ner is an av hatuma. And when an av touches food or drinks, it becomes the next level, a Rishon. So the oil was bumped up from Shlishi to Rishon. And that's Rabbi Akiva's Chiddush. That's what they did in the Beis HaMikdash. Verstehst? Excellent. Yes. It gets bumped up, right. Yes. Yes. The ner becomes the same as the thing it touched. It became an av, so the oil in the ner becomes a rishon. The oil will not become an av, no. Yeah. That's the chiddush of Rabbi Akiva over Reb Chanina. That's what Rabbi Yehuda explained to justify the chiddush of Rabbi Akiva over Reb Chanina. Asks the Gemarah, 3 lines from the top, Yudalad Amid Beis. Umay ducha keder Rabbi Yehuda lukme b'ner shal matches. Why does Rabbi Yehuda have to press himself and say Rabbi Akiva is talking about a ner shal matches? Rabbi Akiva just said that they burned the oil in a ner shenitma b'tmei meis, a ner that became contaminated through somebody who was tamei by a mace. But he doesn't say what type of ner. So Rabbi Yehuda said it has to be matches in order to make a chiddush over Reb Chanina. Rabbi Yehuda says, ask the Gemarah is always looking to find the truth. Who says? What's pushing Rabbi Yehuda to say it was only a metal lamp? Nukme b'ner shel cheres. Say it was an earthenware lamp. It was an earthenware lamp. You asked a good question. My hoisif. If so, what's the isafa of Rabbi Akiva? Because if it's an earthenware lamp, the oil becomes a sheni. Because an earthenware lamp who touches a person doesn't become an av, it becomes a Rishon. So the oil in that lamp is a sheni. If so, he's just repeating Reb Chanina. We wanted to say that Rabbi Akiva is adding something. That's why we said ner shal matches. There's no reason yet to say it's ner shal matches. My hoisef pashat. The luhasam tamei v'tamei. V'luhacha pasel v'tamei. Even without the bumping it up from Sheni to Rishon, you have a chiddush. Why? Take a look at what Reb Chanina tells us. Reb Chanina is telling us tamei v'tamei. Reb Akiva is telling us pasel v'tamei. You understand? I'll explain. Reb Chanina is telling us that one tamei gets bumped up to another tamei, but they both remain tamei. Reb Akiva is telling me a pasel can get bumped up to a tamei. And we have to remember the terms. Tamei means you're not only impure, you can transfer impurity to something of the same genre like you. Pasel means you are disqualified, but you don't have the intensity to transfer it to something in your group, in your genre. So let's understand. Truma gets interrupted by Shlishi, meaning if I have oil of Truma, or wine of Truma, or bread of Truma, that is a Shlishi. Why is it a Shlishi? It touched a Sheni. And now this bread of Truma touches my wine of Truma. What happens to the wine of Truma? Nothing. In other words, this bread is not called Tamei, it's called Pasel. Because it can't transfer to the next level, it's too weak. Karbanos can go till Revi, can go a 4th level, not Chamishi, but till Revi. So if my bread of Truma is Tamei and it touches the meat of your carbon, the meat of your carbon now became Pasel, because it became a Revi. So Pasel is much weaker than Tamei. Tamei means you're contagious. Pasel means you already got the antibiotics, you're good. It's contained. You understand? Tamei means you're dangerous. Pasel means, okay, you have an issue, but you're good, we're good. We don't have to run away from you. It's a big difference. Reb Chanina taught us that you could bump up Tamei to Tamei. The meat was Shlishi. The first meat was Rishon. You put them together in a fire, what happens? The meat that was Shlishi becomes a Sheni. But when it was Shlishi, it was Tamei. Because carbonos go till Revi. So a Shlishi of carbon is not Pasel, it's Tamei. So he said you can go from 3 to 2, from Shlishi to Sheni. It was previously Tamei, and now it's also going to be Tamei, a higher level. Rabbi Akiva says a much bigger chiddush. Rabbi Akiva says you can go from Pasel to Tamei. Remember, the oil that was a Shlishi wasn't Tamei. It wasn't contagious. It was just Pasel. It couldn't travel anymore. When you put it in the lamp of Cheres, what happens? It becomes a Sheni. A Sheni of oil is what? Is Tamei. It's not Pasel. So it's a much bigger chiddush. You're not only bumping it up from Tamei to Tamei, which is in the same world, in the same genre. You're bumping it up from Pasel to Tamei. That's a chiddush. That you're allowed to take something that was only Pasel and elevate it elevate the tumah to the point that it can transfer tumah to others. Before this, it couldn't transfer. It was a puzzle. And now you made it a tameh. That's the gewaldige chiddush of Rabbi Akiva. First, the shemen was puzzle because there's no revi by truma. And now it becomes a sheni, it becomes tameh, because it can transfer the tumah to another piece of truma. So now you made it detrimental in a way that it didn't exist in the beginning. You gave it a new type of tumah. According to the B'chanina, you went up from Shlishi to Sheni. Here you gave it a new type of tumah. You are now transferable. You are now a conduit for tumah. The tumah can go through you. That's a whole different level. That's a chiddush of Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva says you're allowed to do it if it's being burnt. Since you're burning the oil, you're allowed to do it. This we would not learn from Reb Chanina. So why does Rabbi Yehuda have to shtup and say, no, it's a ner shel matchis and went from Shlishi to Rishon? I'm good if it went from Shlishi to Sheni. There's no need to zetz ein, to press Rabbi Akiva into the ner matchis. I don't care if it's a ner matchis. But even if it's not a ner matchis, if it's a ner cheres, I still have a chiddush from Shlishi to Sheni because I made it not from tameh, but from posel tameh. That's the question that the Gemarah asks on Rabbi Yehuda's explanation of the Mishnah, how to explain the chiddush of Rabbi Akiva over Reb Chanina. Excellent. You're asking if the oil could be metame kachim, why is it called posel? It's only called tameh if it can be metame things that are in its own genre, in its own groupings of food. You understand? If it's a sheni, it could be metame something just like it, like truma. But if it's a shlishi and it touches truma, nothing happens. So that's why it's called posel. Now the interesting thing here is, when you look in the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva didn't mention the word truma. Rabbi Akiva just said shemen. They never stop burning oil shenifsal. How do you know what shemen is it? Maybe it's shemen of kachim. Maybe it's oil of karbonis. And if it would be oil of karbonis, it wouldn't be posel, it would be tameh. He never says it's shemen shel truma, he just says shemen. Rashi put into the Mishnah truma. But maybe it's shemen of karbonis, and if it's shemen of karbonis, a shlishi is not called posel. A shlishi is called tameh. Huh? No, one of the karbonis was menachos, meal offerings, grain. They would take flour and mix it with oil. So you had to have oil, right? We learn always in the karbonis, right? You had the menachos, and you always had balul, b'shemen, kasis, revius. It was always mixed into oil. Very good. So you're answering, as Rashi says, when the oil is mixed with flour, you're not going to put it into a menorah to burn. You don't put oil mixed with flour into a menorah to burn. So that's why he doesn't think it's shemen of menachos. But you could say something else. Before you mix the oil into the flour, you first have to have the oil. Maybe the oil got tameh. At that point, there was a tful yom, there was a kohen. He went to the mikveh, right? He didn't realize, he touched oil. He was like, oops! This oil was used for menach, was supposed to be used for menachos. So this oil, which was already kadosh and klei shares, is now a shlishi, and it's not called posel, it's called tameh. Why is it called tameh? Because it can transfer the tumah. So Rabbi Akiva can't say it's going from posel to tameh. Because it was tameh, because it's karbonos, it's not truma. Maybe that's where Rabbi Yehuda had to say it was a ner shel matchis. So Rashi brilliantly tells us you couldn't say that. Why? Very simple. Karbonos that become tameh, you have to burn them, but you're not allowed to benefit from them when you burn them. If you're putting it into a ner, it means you're enjoying the destruction. That's only a halacha in truma, not in karbonos. Karbonos you burn and there's no hana from it. Truma, we have a special limud that you can enjoy it while you burn it. So that's how we know that Rabbi Akiva was talking about truma. If he was talking about truma, then it was posel, and now it became tameh. So we solved that issue. This is what Rashi explains. So we're back to the question why Rabbi Yehuda needs to push it into the ner shel matchis paradigm. So steht in the Mishnah, shenifsal. So you're saying since it says nifsal, it means that it was It was truma, because it says shenifsal. Huh? But Reb Chanina, it says nitma. And here it says shenifsal. So obviously it was truma. You're saying from the fact that it says shenifsal, we already know that what? That it is truma. You say maybe the shemen, but it says betful yoim. A tful yoim is considered a sheni. So if he touches the oil, right, that's true. If it wasn't truma, it would become possible by sheni, but not. Yeah. You're saying already from the word shenifsal, we see that it's truma, even without this whole cheshbon. Because if it was shemen of kachim, it would have to be shenitma. That's what you're saying. From Rashi, we see that if it was shemen of kodesh, it would be called tameh. It wouldn't be pasul, and that's why the whole Gemarah would change. Because the tful yom would make it shlishi, and shlishi b'kodesh would be called tameh, because it makes revi b'kodesh. Yeah. It's an interesting order. There's a good order. Okay. So we're left with a question. Why do we have to push Rabbi Akiva into the Ner Shel Matchas paradigm? Amar Rava said Rabbi Yehuda understood this very well. He could have said this, but Rabbi Yehuda was bothered by something. And let's think about it. And here we learn right away how you have to read the words of a Tana. Rabbi Akiva said they took oil that was pasul b'tvul yoim, and they put it in a ner shenitma b'tmei meis. A ner that became tamei, how? Through contact with somebody who touched a mace. That's tmei mace. Tmei mace means I become tamei through a mace, and the ner became tamei through that. That's what he said. Why did Rabbi Akiva have to tell me the words tmei mace? What if the ner became tamei another way? What if the lamp touched a dead mouse? What if there's a dead mouse in a lamp? It's also tamei. It could have happened with tmei mace, but why does Rabbi Akiva have to limit the case? Just say the koyanim didn't care to put oil in a ner that was tamei. Let's say it touched a sheretz. A mouse goes into a menorah, right, and it dies. So now what's the status? The sheretz is an av. What's the menorah? A Rishon. If you put the oil in the menorah, it becomes a sheni. Why does Rabbi Akiva have to limit it? It works with Tmei Meis also, but why? Why give an example that makes it narrower? Just say, a ner that's tamei. How? It could touch a sheretz. It could touch a nevela. It could touch a person who touched a mace. It could touch a lot of other things that are avatuma, becomes tamei. There's 11 avas hatuma that it could touch and become tamei. That's the issue that bothered Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rava masnisin kshise. It wasn't just he was looking for a chiddush over Reb Chanina. For the chiddush, he could have done what we just did. Tamei, pasul tamei. The Mishnah is bothering him. Masnisin kshise. Ma'yir the tani ner shenitma b'tmei meis, nisna shenitma b'sheretz. What's wrong with a menorah that became tamei through a sheretz? It's also a rishon. Just like a clay cheres who touches a person who touched a mace is a rishon. I touched a mace, I'm an av. I touched a menorah, it's a rishon if it's a clay cheres. If it touched a sheretz, it's also a rishon. Same thing. So you said you don't want the oil to become. It's also a rishon l'tumah. So what's wrong with the example of a sheretz? What's wrong? Just say ner shenitma. A ner that became tamei. It could be a tmei mace, right? Who's an av? It could be a sheretz. Any avatuma is metame kalim. Every avatuma is metame a menorah. What's the big deal? Hello. This means Rabbi Akiva is trying to say something. He wants a mace. He doesn't want a sheretz. Why? Ella ezo dover shechaluka to Monsey ben to Matos-Maasei l'sheretz eva oimez a matches. There's one thing. What distinguishes tumah from a mace to tumah from a sheretz? In other words, what's the difference if a menorah, a lamp, touches a sheretz, or a lamp touches a person who touched a mace? They're both avatumas. Is there a difference? Is there a difference if a menorah touches a sheretz or an avela? No. Is there a difference if a menorah touches a sheretz or an avela or a zav? No. What's the difference between the tumah of touching a sheretz and mace? One thing, a metal lamp. Because if a metal lamp touches a person who touched a mace, it becomes an abatumah. If a metal lamp touches a sheretz, it becomes a Rishon l'tumah. That's the key difference. Because only by tumas meis do we have the halacha that cherev hareu kechalal. Only by tumas meis, by nothing else. B'meila, when Rabbi Akiva says tmei meis, he wants to tell me something. He wants to say not sheretz, only meis. Why? What does he care? So I want to look, what's the maila? The maila is, metal, a metal keli. Or according to some, everything besides klei cheretz. It's just, usually it was metal. But what's the maila? The difference is metal. What's the difference? Here it's an av, here it's a rishon. That's why Rabbi Yehuda said, it's speaking about a ner shal matches, and it becomes a rishon, because the ner is an av, so the oil becomes a rishon. So the chiddush of Rabbi Akiva is that it goes from shlishi to rishon. That's how he knows that's the chiddush. By the way, the Akiva has a second chiddush, that it goes from posel to tameh. But that's already swallowed up in the chiddushim. That's also a good chiddush. I don't care. Once I have the first chiddush, I have the second chiddush too. But we wanted to say that Rabbi Akiva only said the chiddush of posel to tameh and use a klei cheres. You can't say that, because for that, he could have used any ner that was tameh, even a sheretz, because that would make the oil from shlishi to sheni, from posel to tameh. Why did he give me the mace example? Because Rabbi Akiva wants to teach me something else. That shemen could be bumped up from shlishi to rishon. That can only happen if there was a mace involved. A sheretz would never make my oil a rishon, because the lamp would be a rishon and the oil would remain a sheni. Because Rabbi Akiva gave the example of tmei mace, it means he's trying to bump up the tumah to rishon. That's what Rabbi Yehuda was thinking. He knew that there's a chiddush even with sheni, but he was trying to explain the Mishnah according to Rabbi Akiva. Once he explains the Mishnah with metal, the chiddush becomes beautiful. Reb Chanina said from a shlishi you can become a sheni. Rabbi Akiva says from a shlishi you can become a rishon. Plus Rabbi Akiva says from a posel you could become a tameh. That's an extra chiddush that we already also know from this whole discussion. So it doesn't exclude the chiddush that we tried to propose. That's what kvetched him ner shal matches. He wasn't trying to narrow Rabbi Akiva down to a matches. He was trying to explain what Rabbi Akiva is saying. Rabbi Akiva wanted to tell you a chiddush that you only know from mace, you wouldn't know from any other tumah. What's the chiddush? That the oil can become a rishon. Hast mich schon verladen? If you'll chazer it, you'll understand. I'm telling you, you'll understand well. It's you just have to chazer. Yeah. If it was klei cheres, it would go from posel to tameh, but you wouldn't get from shlishi to rishon. Because klei cheres itself is a rishon, so the oil would be sheni. Only klei matchis, which is an av, the oil becomes a rishon. Only by mace. Because obviously Rabbi Akiva wasn't trying to say that chiddush. Because Rabbi Akiva uses the words Neir shenitma b'tmei meis. Why would Rabbi Akiva do that? Why narrow your testimony? Rabbi Akiva should say they put the oil in a lamp that was tameh. How? I don't care. Figure it out. Any avatuma. Whenever you say a halacha, you try to be. You do broad strokes, right? You want to be as inclusive as possible to teach the halacha. So now we understand why he says tmei meis, because it's a much bigger chiddush. Obviously, if it was a tumas sheretz, it would work. That's not a chiddush. He wants to say even tmei meis, where the oil becomes a rishon, still it would be fine. Still, it would be fine. Amarava. You got it? You have a question, yeah?
Ingredient now to bump up the if you add two things, because you need a wick, it's possible.
You need a wick. Usually the shear, to be metame, you have to have a shear to be metame. And I would think that the wick is usually not that shear. Like a beged, right? That's a small little piece of a beged. There's no tumah. You know, you need 3 tfachim al 3 tfachim. You need some reasonable size for it to be. All tumah has a shear. Like we learned, you know, nevelas, a kazayas, even a mace. Right?
Technically, you could pick a piece of.
You're right. If you have a material. Why? So let's say even the wick was a shear to become tummy, so it would also become tummy. But who cares? In other words, the wick, you're allowed to be metame a wick. My problem is oil because it's truma. I'm allowed to be metame my coffee. I don't have a problem. There's no isser to be metame food. The isser is to be metame truma because it's sacred. And when you're metame it, you disqualify yourself from doing the mitzvah of eating it. The Torah says clearly, Mishmeres trumoisai, anina sati lecha and korach. You have to guard my truma. Anina sati lecha es mishmeres trumoisai. Everything is a pasuk. Hashem tells Aaron, Moshe tells Aaron, God gave you the mitzvah to guard truma. Mishmeres trumoisai. I gave it to you. You have guard it from what? Guard it from what? Guard it from tumah. And it says trumoisai loshen rabim, which means that even truma tmeya I gave you. In other words, from here we learn that you can have benefit from it. You're allowed to burn it in a way that you have benefit from it. Amar Rava said, Shma minam. From here we learn something. Kasav Rabbi Akiva holds tumas mashkin. It's obvious that Rabbi Akiva did not buy into the idea that beverage cannot be metame other things biblically. It's obvious Rabbi Akiva holds that when liquid becomes tame, it could contaminate other things on a biblical level. Meaning, if mashkin touches food, regular mashkin at some touches food, Rabbi Akiva would hold the food is tamei min ha-Torah. If mashkin touches other liquids of truma, it becomes tamei. And we learned before an opinion that oichel is not metame oichel, mashkin is not metame mashkin only by chulin, but by truma yeah, by kachim yeah. So Rabbi Akiva would hold that mashkin is metame other food, and by truma and kachim, perhaps even other liquids. But the point is that liquid can transfer tumah to other foods or sometimes other liquids biblically. What's the chiddush here? On Daf Tes Zayin, we're going to learn that there are Tanoim who hold that liquids don't transfer tumah. It's a unique chiddush. Liquids can become tameh, but they don't pass on tumah biblically. Obviously, which we're going to learn about. Rabbi Akiva obviously doesn't hold this way. He holds that min ha-Torah liquids can become tameh and also transfer tumah. Why? Maybe not. Pashat. The isol kadaitich the rabbanon. If Rabbi Akiva holds that mashkin can only pass on tumah rabbinically, then let's think about this. The oil was a shlishi. I put in the oil to a menorah, right? It became a sheni or a rishon. Rabbi Akiva says, "Oi, how do you do it? You're allowed to because you're burning it, right?" But if you hold that according to Rabbi Akiva, liquids can only pass on tumah rabbinically, not biblically. Michte, let's see. Hai neir, this neir, which is an avatuma, this metal lamp, what does it do to this oil? It made it a rishon, right? Okay, so what happened now? Ili psule gufe. If it disqualifies the oil itself, hapasul v'kai, it was already disqualified before you put it into the menorah because it became pasul from a tvul yom. Rabbi Akiva told us that it was oil that became pasul b'tvul yom, right? Reb Chanina said you can make a shlishi or sheni. And Rabbi Akiva said you can make from a Shlishi a Rishon, right? But if minatayre liquids cannot pass on tumah, so oil is a liquid. So minatayre, it can't pass on tumah. So who cares if it went from Shlishi to Rishon? For itself, it was disqualified before also. To pass on tumah to others, you're saying you can't. Biblically, you can't. If oil can't pass on tumah to others, who cares if you make it a Rishon? What's the big deal? It's not any worse than making a Shlishi a Sheni, because you're not increasing the koyach to be metame others. In other words, Reb Chanina said you could make the meat a Shlishi a Sheni. Comes Reb Akiva and says you can make it even a Rishon. We said that's a Chiddush. Why is it a Chiddush? Because a Sheni, essentially, what's the difference of a Rishon and a Sheni? A Sheni stops. For Chulin, it can't continue. A Rishon could continue. That's the Chiddush. But if it's Mashkin and Mashkin can't continue, so what's the difference of a Rishon and a Sheni? Biblically, nothing can happen anyway. So there's no Chiddush of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said you're allowed to be Mosef Tumah and Shemen. What do? You make from a Shlishi, not only a Sheni, you even make a Rishon. Yeah. Rabbi Chanina said a Sheni, Rabbi Akiva said a Rishon. What's the mile of Rishon over Sheni? In both cases, it's disqualified on its own before, right? It's already possible before the Ner. What's the Chiddush of adding Tumah? Why would that be prohibited? Because you're adding another level of Tumatit. What's the other level of Tumatit? That it's capable of transferring Tumah to something else. But if you say that Truma is a mashke, it's a liquid, and biblically you can't transfer Tumah from a liquid to anything else, so what's the Chiddush? That they could put Shemen in a Nei. For itself it was Tumah anyway. And for transferring Tumah, it can't transfer Tumah, you're saying, to anything else. So what would be the Chiddush? Let's think. Reb Chanina said you're allowed to take meat and make it from a Shlishi or Sheni in the fire. Came Rabbi Akiva and said, I want to add something. I'm going to add something. You could take oil, that's possible, from a Tvul Yoim, and put it in a Neir Shenitma B'Tmei, and as we explained, that Neir is an Av, and the Shemen becomes a Rishon. You can even make Shemen a Rishon. That you didn't hear from Reb Chanina. That I'm telling you. Rabbi Akiva's Chiddush. What's the big Chiddush? What's the mile of Rishon over Sheni? That it could be metame more. If the oil is a sheni, it can't travel anymore to chulin, only to truma. If it's a rishon, right, it's more tummy. Even if it touches chulin, it becomes tummy. So it's a much gewaldige chiddush. But if tumas mashkin minatayre doesn't transfer, so whether it's a sheni, it doesn't transfer. If it's a rishon, it doesn't transfer. So what did you add by putting it in a neir that becomes a rishon? Nothing was added. So you're not being mechadish anything over Reb Chanina. You're repeating what Reb Chanina said. And it's even less than Reb Chanina because there's no chiddush here. Because you're not adding anything. For itself, it was tummy before the neir. You put it in the neir, what did you accomplish? It became more tummy. What do you mean it became more tummy? I'm not allowed to eat it? I wasn't allowed to eat it before too. So what did it become more tummy? What? Tell me what happened. I'm not allowed to eat it? I wasn't allowed to eat it before. Oh, it became more tummy that it can't pass on anything. So where did it become? So nothing happened. So who cares? You can't be moisef tumah. You're not being moisef anything. Nothing happened. It just becomes more disqualified to eat. Okay. It's like you add horse meat to chazer. Thank you. You made it more treif. It's Yom Kippur. So you put into your burger, you put in vegetables. So it becomes so more isser. Fine. I mean, of course you're adding tumah, but it doesn't mean anything. You have treif of food, you put in more treif of food. You have a cheeseburger, you put in another piece of cheese. You put in pork. I mean, what do you do? Yeah, you were mice of other stuff, but it doesn't mean anything practically. You took truma, you couldn't eat it. You didn't change its status. You added tumah. What do you mean you added tumah? What type of tumah did you add? It doesn't add more isur. Fine. Yeah, you mean because you eat it, you mean it's another lav. You're saying it's another lav. If it's another lav. Okay, but here that doesn't apply. Oh, but if you hold that mash can give you metama midayraisa, So now Rabbi Akiva is making a chiddush that if the shemen becomes from a shlishi or sheni, right, then it can only be metame truma because it's a sheni. But if it becomes a rishon, its tumah is much greater. It can pass on tumah to chulin even. That's a big chiddush. So if Rabbi Rava says from here, you see clearly Rabbi Akiva's shita, mashkin can pass on tumah. So the Gemarah says, Mimai, how do you know? How do you know? Maybe it's rabbinic. Maybe this issue is rabbinic. Maybe Rabbi Akiva holds mashkin doesn't pass on tumah. The only way it can pass on tumah is what? Rabbinic. Reb Chanina, we learned before that oichel is not metame oichel min ha-Torah. Oichel does not contaminate other oichel min ha-Torah. According to one opinion, it was even by karbonis. So how could Reb Chanina say that meat gets tummy by meat? He meant midrabanan. So Reb Chanina said that you're allowed to make meat from a shlishi or sheni and becomes tummy midrabanan. And Rabbi Akiva said you can make truma, shlishi or rishon, and it's going to be metame midrabanan, maybe not min ha-Torah. You're right. Based on, if you learn Reb Chanina, that Reb Chanina was talking about a derabanan, because oichel won't be metame oichel, only midrabanan, if you learn that even by karbonis, oichel won't be metame oichel, as there was that shitter Ravina Mishmei de Rava. So then, Reb Chanina says, a shlishi can become a sheni midrabanan. It's only rabbinic. Biblically, nothing happened. But still, you're not allowed to be metame something midrabanan. Comes Rabbi Akiva, and I'll say, you know what? I'm telling you even more. A shlishi of truma could become a rishon. Who cares? Midrabanan, it's a big thing. If it's a sheni midrabanan, it can only transfer truma to a truma. If it's a rishon midrabanan, it can transfer truma to another food midrabanan, only midrabanan, fine. But that's a chiddush, and you're allowed to do it. What's the big deal? Put it into that category. Says the Gemarah, no. Imidir Rav is right. Imidir if that's what Rabbi Akiva felt, my area ba'avatuma. Then why does he want to put the oil in a nair that's an avatuma? Why does he have to put the oil into that lamp? Remember our good metal lamp that touched somebody who touched the maze? Who needs that? Afilu b'rishon v'sheni nami. He could put the oil even a nair that's a rishon, and even a nair that is a sheni. Okay, now here we need one little introduction. A little introduction. And that is, the laws of Tumah and Tara were so complex and they were so common. Just to give a simple example, every month, once a month, a regular household had to bring all the mattresses to the mikveh and put them in the mikveh. Okay? Imagine you would go out in the morning and every day there was somebody with mattresses. Why? Because when a woman has her cycle, she's a nida, and she's metame what's called mishkav v'moishev, right? Mishkav v'moishev would mean that which you sit on, that which she lays on, those things that are makabel tumah. I'm just giving one example, things that we don't even appreciate today. Right? Somebody died in a house, and all the kalim that become tameh needed ashes and water from the paraduma. Everything had to go to the mikveh. But that's rare, somebody dies in a house. But these are things that happen every month. She was a nida, things that happen. Tumah and Tara was very, very intense halachas. So the chachamim, whose job is always asu mishmeres l'mishmarti, to create buffer zones, created a tremendous amount of institutions when it came to Tumah and Tara. One of those institutions is a very fascinating idea, and that is as follows. Okay? I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to explain it. Kol ha-metame, Kol ha-poisel es-hatruma, metame mashkin liyos tchila. Anything that disqualifies truma, which means any sheni that would make truma possible to eat, if it touches liquid, the liquid becomes a rishon. Now, that's a very strange and interesting halacha. It goes backwards. This is a unique halacha. Let's give an example. You have food, okay? The food touched, let's say, touched, like in our case, the food touched something that was an av, the food touched something that was a rishon l'tumah. Let's say the food touched wine, right? That a sheretz fell into the wine. The sheretz is an Av, the wine is a Rishon, and this wine touches my bread. It spills, my kiddush spills on my challah. What's my bread? A sheni. Okay, a sheni. This is a sheni. What happens to this bread? This bread, if it touches truma, it's going to make the truma puzzle, because truma comes. If this bread touches other bread, regular bread, nothing happens, right? But here's a chiddush. If this bread touches wine, that wine goes back and becomes a rishon. Okay? Now, if this wine becomes a rishon, if this wine touches bread, the bread becomes a sheni. Even though technically speaking, this wine should have not been anything, because this wine is already a shlishi, right? But this wine or water, any mashkin, any of the 7 beverages becomes a rishon, and now the order starts over again. So understand how this works, okay? If I have wine that touched a sheretz, my wine is a rishon. My wine touched bread. The bread is a sheni. Bread is a sheni. Now the bread touches wine. This wine becomes not a shlishi. This wine, if it would be truma, would be a shlishi. But the hanu halacha is that the chachamim made that whenever liquids become pasul, become tameh, right? Whenever liquids come in contact with a rishon or a sheni, they go back to rishon. If the liquid touches an av, it's anyway a rishon. You don't need the chachamim, that you have the Torah for, that you have God for. But even if the liquid is supposed to be a sheni or a shlishi, it jumps back to become a rishon. Fascinating halacha. In other words, liquid will always be a rishon rabbinically. Always. There'll never be less than that. Why? If it's a sheni, it's a rishon. If it's a shlishi, it's a rishon again. So what will happen now? So now, my wine touched my sheretz, it became a rishon. The wine touched bread, the bread became a sheni. The bread touches wine, what should it be biblically? Nothing, unless the wine is truma, right? Sheni doesn't make a shlishi in chulin. There's a chiddush. This wine becomes now a rishon. Now if this wine touches bread, this bread becomes a sheni. So here's an interesting thing. You know what the Chazal say about this? That the bread speaks to the wine, and the bread tells the wine, listen to these words. Mitamecha loitimuni va'ata timasani. The guy who made you tameh would never make me tameh. But you made me tameh. Who made you tameh? Bread. That was a sheni. If that bread would have touched me, what would have happened? Nothing. I'm chulin. That bread, where you came from, your daddy would have not made me tameh. But you, who got your tumah from the bread, you make me tameh, because you become a rishon.
So does that change the oil effect?
That's a din of mashkin. Fascinating halacha. We have to understand why the chachamim made this halacha. Why are you going to do this? Why does mashkin jump backwards? That's not fair. We keep on going, devolush goes down, 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 so the boops, back up.
What were they afraid of?
What were they afraid of? They were frightened of something. They were frightened of something. And this is constant. Let's just give practical examples. Things that are paisel truma. Anything that's paisel truma. Min ha-Torah umid rabbanan. For example, the Chachamim made a takana that stam yadayim, regular hands that you didn't wash, are called shenis. If you didn't wash your hands and you let them roam around, right, they're called sheni. What happens when your hand touches truma? It becomes a shlishi. That's the halacha. That's why koyanim, before they eat truma, have to wash their hands. That's why we all wash our hands before bread, so that the koyanim should be used to washing their hands before bread, because yadayim are called shniyos. Now what happens if my hands touch liquid without netilas yadayim? That liquid becomes a rishon. Fascinating halacha. That liquid becomes a rishon. If that liquid now touches bread, that bread becomes a sheni. If that bread now touches another liquid, that liquid becomes a rishon. And if that liquid touches another liquid, it becomes a sheni. If that liquid touches midirabbanan. Back to Rishon. Back to Rishon. Biblically, nothing. Ein mashkin matame mashkin. Rabbinically, the mashkin becomes a Rishon. Yeah. My yadayim touch my mashkin, and the mashkin without natilas yadayim, unless I guarded them a whole day. If I didn't guard them, stam yadayim shniyas, and it's poisel truma, and it makes mashkin tchila. The mashkin becomes a rishon. So now that mashkin touches bread, the bread becomes sheni. That bread touches truma, the truma becomes a shlishi.
That's the only reason.
Huh? That's one of the main reasons. We wash today. The Levush says, the Shulchan Aruch Harav says, the Mishnah Berurah says, because we're waiting for Mashiach any day, and the Kohanim will eat truma, and they have to be used to washing their hands. If not, all the truma is going to be possible. Okay. Another interesting halacha, for example, the Chachamim said that if you eat oichel that's tamei, you become a sheni. Biblically, if you put into my mouth chicken that's tamei, or coffee that's tamei, nothing happens, because tumah is only if you touch it. Usually not if you swallow it. So if you take bread that's tamei, let's say the bread touched a sheretz, okay? The bread is tamei. And you put it into my mouth, I'm not tamei. Even if I touch the bread, I'm not tamei, because bread is a rishon, and a rishon can't make an adam tamei. So I take the bread, I'm not tamei. I'm good. But the Chazal made a tumah on somebody who eats oichel tamei. They made a special tumah. He's called a sheni. And they did it for a very good reason. Because people would eat tamadika food, right? And they're not tamei. And then they could put into their mouth truma, wine of truma, a kohen, right? And the wine touches the bread, and the truma became posel in your mouth. So that's why they made a takana that whenever you eat tamadika food or tamadika liquid, even though you're allowed to eat tamei food, you're allowed to eat tamei liquid if it's chulin. Truma not, karbanis not, but regular food you're allowed to eat if it's tamei. It's not a problem. You're allowed to. But they made, you should be tamei as a sheni. So if I touch truma, the truma becomes, that way a kohen would never ever put in food into his mouth if he's eating tamei food. It was a very interesting takana. So if I now eat a piece of bread that's tamei, right? I become a sheni. If I touch liquid, that liquid becomes a rishon. Any situation that's poisel truma makes the mashkin a. So let's now complete the discussion. So what's the Gemarah saying? So the Gemarah is saying, if Rabbi Akiva is talking about rabbinic tumah, then even if the oil is in a menorah that's a rishon, what happens to the oil? It becomes a rishon. So he doesn't have to go to Tmei Meis. We did Tmei Meis because he wanted it to become a rishon. It's anyway a rishon if it's rabbinic. So obviously he's not speaking rabbinic. Speaking on a biblical level. On a biblical level, mashkin could transfer tumah. Shemen is mashke. Because if a good question, if a tvul yoim touches it, it's a shlishi, it's not a rishon. A tvul yoim is not a regular source of tumah. A tvul yoim is somebody who's tahir. If he touches mashkin, it doesn't become a shlishi. It remains a shlishi. It's possible for truma. Verstehst? We'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. Please try the chazer. Why mashkin? Not by oichlin. Oichlin, this doesn't apply. We'll explain. I'll explain tomorrow. Yeah, but why mashkin? Why didn't they make this takana by oichlin?
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.